Listen, as badly as I want to start this video off with jokes about Mecole Hardman, there is something pressing that has to be addressed. Apparently, Chiefs practice, Chiefs OTA, was canceled today after BJ Thompson, the second-year defensive lineman, had a seizure that caused cardiac arrest. I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm going to be 100% clear. I know nothing about this, and I am not one to speculate on this sort of thing. So, the only speculation that I will add to this situation is to say this. Apparently, from reports, what had happened during a special teams meeting. So this was not something that was caused. So we've probably all seen a seizure induced by concussion. Very scary thing. For my generation, the most famous example of this, CJ Spiller, I believe, in college, dove into the end zone, landed on his head, ended up having a seizure in the end zone. From what I understand, and this is as deep as speculation will go on this channel for this sort of thing, that is not the case with this. This sounds like it was not brought on by contact, not brought on through concussive activities. So, other than that, guys, I have no idea if that is the case, and I have no medical history with seizures through anyone in my family, so I have no background knowledge of this. But that would seem to be something that would have been a prior existing sort of malady, it is from what I understand. So if it's not brought on by a concussive activity, I guess that it would be something that was already there. I don't know. But that is all that I have to say on that issue. Hopefully BJ Thompson gets better. Hopefully BJ Thompson is all right. I have heard nothing outside of those words. But you saw the thumbnail, you read the title for this video. Apparently, Mecole Hardman is back. Back again. Tell a friend. Mecole Hardman, we get this from Arrowhead Pride in an article by John Dixon. Quote, according to The Athletic's Diana Rossini, Hardman is signing a one-year contract. Still just 26 years old, Hardman will be entering his sixth NFL season. Kansas City selected the former Georgia wideout in the second round, 56th overall, in the 2019 NFL Draft, while Hardman collected at least 500 receiving yards in every one of his first 3 seasons with the Chiefs. He was overshadowed by wide receiver Tyreek Hill. After Hill was traded to the Miami Dolphins in 2022, though, Hardman missed the final 9 games of the regular season with a mysterious injury. Eventually, we learned it was osteitis pubis, which sounds like something that I was called multiple times in middle school, an inflammation of the joints in the pubic bones that required a harrowing hospital stay and surgery to correct. Now, I have 5 thoughts on this signing, this re-signing for the Kansas City Chiefs, and let's go ahead and get into those. Number 1, guys, this is more about the ceiling, or the floor, than it is the ceiling. The Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver core has a whole lot of potential. Sky Moore really does show some signs that he could be good. Justin Ross, all-world his freshman year in college. Kadarius Toney has more potential than any wide receiver that has ever stepped onto a football field. Apparently, Rashee Rice, full of potential, very promising rookie season, very nearly hit 1,000 yards. And on and on and on. There is very little, however, that has been proven by any of these guys in the NFL. The one guy that seems to have proven all there is to prove for him is Justin Watson, he's Justin Watson. That's it, right? Here we have Mecole Hardman, who in 2019, and the end of this point is going to possibly blow your mind. In 2019 as a rookie, Mecole Hardman had 41 targets, 26 receptions, and 538 yards. In 2020, his sophomore campaign, Mecole Hardman was responsible for 62 targets, 41 receptions, 560 yards. Again, he crossed that 500-yard barrier. Then, in 2021, and I'm searching for something that's going to be pertinent in a second. I apologize for my lack of focus right now. In 2021, he took a step up from that, something that we have yet to see many of the Kansas City Chiefs receivers do. I'm looking at you, Sky Moore, with 83 targets, translated to 59 receptions, and 693 yards. Now, in 2022, he played just 8 games. Again, he had that mysterious injury, as cited by John Dixon, where he had 34 targets, 25 receptions, and 297 yards. Last season, the Kansas City Chiefs, that prolific offense for the Kansas City Chiefs last year, one wide receiver, Rashee Rice with 938 yards, went over Mecole Hardman's 2019 rookie season stats of 538 yards. Every other wide receiver was shy of 500 yards. I believe Justin Watson had 460. That was the next closest. Now, that's not all. We know how the offense struggled last year. We were there. We watched this unravel on television. They still won the Super Bowl. The previous season, however, the offense seemed to be a lot better. 2022, the Kansas City Chiefs had just 2 wide receivers go over that 538-yard total from Mecole Hardman's rookie season. They had Juju Smith-Schuster at 933 yards. We all remember that. And then they had Marquez Valdes-Scantling at 687. Yes, Marquez Valdes-Scantling declined precipitously. He fell off the face of the earth last season. Never has Marquez Valdes-Scantling been a premier wide receiver. That's just true. That was never who he was. He was also never who he was last season. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, though he does not have the most impressive stats, had 581 yards as a rookie, 452 in his sophomore campaign, 690 in 2020, 430 in 2021, 687 his first year in Kansas City, and then a career-low 315 yards last season. That's point number 1. This move is more about the floor of this wide receiver core than it is the ceiling. With Mecole Hardman on the roster, the floor of that wide receiver room raises. It gets higher. Now, yes, Mecole Hardman had a bad year last year. I don't know that we necessarily have any reason to believe that he fell off in the same way that Marquez Valdes-Scantling did. It seemed that he was part of a numbers game in New York, and then when he came back to Kansas City, he had he had, I believe, 8 yards with the Jets before coming back and having 124 for the Chiefs last season. So Yeah, I think that every bit of his underperformance last year was just the circumstance in New York, followed by only having that half season with the Chiefs. The number two thought I have here, somebody's got to go. Now, obviously, when you're talking about this, you would probably start with the lower names on the roster. You would start with Nico Remigio, for example. You would start with whoever it is that is having that last spot given to them on the roster, whoever you think that guy is. I kind of disagree. I don't think that you're bringing Mecole Hardman in to nibble at the bottom of the roster. I think Mecole Hardman is being brought in to provide that middle class of the wide receiver core that is full of potential. Right? So, Sky Moore. Sky Moore, I list him first here because, in my opinion, I think Sky Moore might be the odd man out. Justin Ross isn't making a whole lot of money, right? Justin Ross might not have any guaranteed money. I'm not 100% positive on that. Kadarius Toney, guys, I made the joke about Kadarius Toney having all of the potential in the world, but it's just true. You've seen the way he moves. You've seen the spectacular catches that he's capable of making. You've seen the punt returns that can come out of this guy. He's got all the potential in the world. He just does. He hasn't practiced in OTAs, at least to my understanding, but he has all of that potential. It's unfortunate that those are the only words you can coordinate with the name Kadarius Toney, but they have to be said. It is mind-boggling type potential. Sky Moore does not have that. He's a good route runner sometimes. Sometimes he's too fancy with it. He was a second-round pick, so he's starting to cost a little bit of money here in his third season. I'm not sure how much of it is guaranteed, and I think that if he is traded, if you can find someone dumb enough to trade for him, if he's traded, I believe all of that salary goes with him. I don't believe that there is anything against the Kansas City Chiefs salary cap if he is in fact traded. And guys, you trade him for peanuts if you have to. If you think that's the guy that goes, you trade him for absolute peanuts if you have to. Justin Ross, probably you cut. Kadarius Toney, I hate to say it, but at this point, probably you cut. The number 3 point that I have here. Yeah, somebody's leaving. But maybe not immediately. It's possible that the Kansas City Chiefs will use the first 8 or so weeks of this season that will coincide with the probably definitely happening Rashee Rice suspension to give these guys kind of a tryout period. Maybe you even end up carrying more wide receivers than you plan to carry later in order to really filter through these guys and find out if anybody has the mettle to stick on the roster. I'm a big fan of the idea, the prospect, the specter, if you will, of Nico Remigio finding his way onto the roster early in the season just to give the guy a tryout. Just see what he can do. And I think, so if Nico Remigio is in the NFL, who Nico Remigio was in training camp last year, he makes Sky Moore expendable because the Nico Remigio that we saw last year in training camp and in that one preseason game where he had a great showing, that's what you had Sky Moore to do. And Sky Moore's never really done it. He could still do it. Year 3 is the year that most wide receivers classically are said to break out, quote unquote. Sky Moore has not broken out through 2 seasons. If Nico Remigio does make the roster, I think it is Sky Moore who is in the most trouble. I think it might be Justin Watson who's in the second most trouble. Again, Justin Watson is a floor guy. Justin Watson brings up the floor of the roster. Justin Watson is not a number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. And by God, he's not an X, right? But I think Justin Watson is a great number 4 wide receiver. The things that he has done traditionally when he's worked best in the offense are running go routes, running post routes, things like that. He was depended on early in the year last year to need to do more than that and wasn't able to get it done. Now, Xavier Worthy's on this offense. Hollywood Brown is on this offense. I don't think Justin Watson is seeing a route outside of 12 yards downfield. Why would you? You don't need that from him. He runs a good 40. I think it was a 4.41. 4.41 or 4.44 40 from Justin Watson. It's not 4.27. Certainly, it is not 4.21. So, if Nico Remigio does end up making this roster, it might be Sky Moore and then Justin Watson who are in the most impending trouble. Nico Remigio is not doing what Kadarius Toney does. Nico Remigio does not move like that. Nico Remigio is not doing what Justin Ross does. Nico Remigio is not high-pointing the ball 30 yards downfield. It's not going to happen. The number 4 thought that I have about Mecole Hardman returning to the Kansas City Chiefs. I know. But Hollywood Brown, 4.27 40-yard dash. Man, that's fast. Xavier Worthy, 4.21 40-yard dash. Man, that's the fastest. Kadarius Toney, 4-yard dash of 4.37. That's really fast. And then you have Mecole Hardman on the field at the same time with a 40-yard dash of 4.33. I don't think there have been probably very few college level Division I 4x100 meter track teams that could beat this 4x1 team. There may be very few college... that's probably exaggeration, right? Kadarius Toney's definitely not lasting a full 100 yards. Mecole Hardman might end up in the wrong lane of that 100-yard dash. We've seen him do similar things in the NFL. Xavier Worthy, if you get him on a track without the helmet and shoulder pads on, might just take flight, right? Not a whole lot of weight holding Xavier. We'd have to put sand in his shoes. Hollywood Brown, I have no more jokes. But a 4-wide set with Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, Kadarius Toney, and Mecole Hardman on the field at the very same time should cause absolute terror and panic. Because you could just run 4 go routes, and you're not going to be able to cover them. If you run 4 go routes with these 4 wide receivers, you're not going to be... Now, who's going to catch the ball? Probably not Kadarius Toney or Mecole Hardman. I'm just putting it out there. But Hollywood Brown, 4.27. Xavier Worthy, 4.21. Kadarius Toney, 4.37. Mecole Hardman, 4.33. That is a terrifying prospect for defensive coordinators in the NFL. And the final thought that I have about Mecole Hardman re-signing with the Kansas City Chiefs is this. I made the ex-girlfriend analogy when he came back to the Kansas City Chiefs. What was the ex-girlfriend analogy? Well, simply put, it was this. The Kansas City Chiefs got off to a terrible start of the season last year, at least offensively. and the offense wasn't going anywhere. They weren't making any action. We can leave it at that. They weren't scoring. We can put it there. You've had that experience with a girlfriend where it's just too much and you guys break up, right? You're alone for a little while and you're not making any action. You're not scoring. It's just, I know it's crass, but the language translates so well to the analogy. And what do you do? What do you do? Maybe it's a Friday night. You're feeling sorry for yourself. You're feeling bad. You call up the ex, right? The Chiefs, they were feeling sorry for themselves. They called up their ex. They called up Mecole Hardman. All of a sudden, it's Netflix and chill time. It is 2 a.m. on a Friday, and Mecole Hardman shows up at your apartment. I'm mixing the analogies now. The ex-girlfriend shows up at your apartment and steps in, and you remember all of the reasons that you guys were broken up. Mecole Hardman came back to Kansas City and immediately ran the wrong route. Mecole Hardman came back to Kansas City and immediately didn't catch anything. But Mecole Hardman came back to Kansas City and immediately Patrick Mahomes was cursing him out on national television. We remember, we were there. That ex-girlfriend walks into the apartment and you remember. By God, she doesn't stop complaining about anything. That ex-girlfriend walks into the apartment and you remember. Man, she really does have some funky breath. That ex-girlfriend walks into the apartment and you remember. Yeah. Deodorant's a really important thing, right? All of those things, whatever it is, you remember it immediately. But, guys, Mecole Hardman is a freaking Super Bowl hero. Mecole Hardman, and I know, you feel the same way probably about Mecole Hardman as do I. You have all the same memories that I have about Mecole Hardman. You have all the same observations that I have about Mecole Hardman. You have all of the same, every time that football goes up in the air out of Patrick Mahomes' rocket arm, you clinch up a little bit until the TV screen shows what wide receiver it's going towards. And if it's Mecole Hardman, we'll just punt, right? You know that as well as I do, but in the pantheon of Super Bowl moments, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, hell, 50 years from now, people will be watching that touchdown. The same way that we see plays, we see the Rams Titans stretching, was it Frank Wycheck stretching for the end zone and he's just short, right? We still see that play. That was 1999, that was 2000, right? It's 2024. That is a quarter century ago. You have to watch every once in a while highlights of John Elway in some Super Bowl 30 years ago. You have to see all of these highlights from, probably you've seen the Marcus Allen reverse field touchdown, right? It was a big moment for my childhood. I used to watch that play over and over again because they had a little Wheaties box that had the run on it, right? That's 40 years ago now. They show it almost every lead up to almost every Super Bowl. 40 years from now, people will be watching that Mecole Hardman highlight. Probably that play over any of the plays that that the Kansas City Chiefs have used to win a Super Bowl yet, right? You've got the wasp play. That ain't this one. Last year, you have Nick Bolton's fumble return for a touchdown that no one ever seems to remember, right? Nobody ever talks about that one. That ain't this one. This play is going to live forever. And that guy's back. That's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.